just about a week away from Thanksgiving, but we have more important things to discuss before the turkey meal. High school football playoffs are underway here in the state of Alabama. The Under the Lights podcast is here to break down all the Class 6A and 7A action. I'm Kyle Parmley, joined today by Gary, Lloyd, Jeff Allison. Guys, welcome in. We've eliminated half of the playoff teams. We're into the second round. Just kind of overall thoughts on what you saw last week, Gary.
Saw a lot of quality football, and I'm glad, we kind of talked about, especially the 6A bracket last week, some of the potential matchups we would have this week, and we got them. So this week, man, I know we've got our coverage area, but for someone like you, Jeff, I can't imagine trying to pick a game to go to this Friday night.
Yeah, it's going to be good. 7A is got some good games, and definitely looking forward to probably traveling to Central to see the Auburn Tigers on the rematch with the Central Phoenix City Red Devils.
Yeah, well, Jeff, you've got a few choices. If you can really psych yourself out and get really lost in trying to figure out where to go. But in 7A, let's start right there. 7A, for those of you not really familiar with the Alabama brackets, Class 7A has half the number of teams as all the rest. So they have one fewer playoff round. So the second round is essentially, it's the quarterfinals already in 7A. Central Phoenix City is going to host Auburn this week. These are region opponents. These are teams that are used to meeting in the semifinals. But with Auburn ending up as the 3 seed out of that region, this game is happening in the second round. Jeff, you were there when they played the first time. What'd you see? How have the teams kind of progressed since then, and what do you expect on Friday night?
Well, I can almost guarantee that Cam Coleman is not going to have a 10-catch, 283-yard game this week against Auburn. I would definitely think that they said, hey, we're going to play it straight up the first game and see everything on film and then make our adjustments. One thing that Auburn does really, really well is play defense. And I look for them to make a change and say, hey, we're going to make someone else beat us. Now, they have other weapons for sure, but one thing, number 8, they're going to try to shut him down and not let him just dominate the game. Anytime they need a big play, Coleman made it. And but it was, like I said, it was all one-on-one coverage. And he had no help, no safety help, no nothing. And I look for that to change Friday night.
Yeah, this will be a really fun matchup. We're used to seeing it. These teams have played a million times over the years. So if I'm not mistaken, they've met in the semis, 4 times in recent years, the last 4
Correct.
years. And so this one is in the second round of the playoffs, but Auburn is still a really good football team. This will be a great game. Jeff, you talked about Cam Coleman, the Texas A&M commit. Now, who really knows where he's going to end up going? A lot of teams still really want him. I got to see him when they played Hewitt-Trussville at the first game of the year, and I can attest that guy is really, really impressive. Well, Jeff, let's stay on the on that half of the bracket. Mary Montgomery, they got past Dothan last week. That was one of those 1 versus 4 games that we thought might have a little bit of intrigue, and it did. It was a good ball game. But MGM gets the win. They stay undefeated. They will host Enterprise this week. Jeff, what do you think there?
Well, another good outing by Mary Montgomery. They were down 13-0 early in that game and had to make a great comeback. And I knew that running style of Dothan would sort of, Mary's never seen much of that single wing offense. So they sort of struggled early in the game with that and made the changes at halftime. But Jared Hollins, we talked about, the quarterback commit, South Alabama, he's legit. He really runs that team, gets it going, can really throw the football down the field. And, Enterprise has its own running game that they have. They got 2 really, really good runners. They got Jamar Malone at quarterback. They got Eric Winters. He's their big guy at quarterback and for Enterprise. And they got the Dunlap and Griffin running backs. And they're really good, 2 tandem guys. Enterprise can put pressure on you, can score points. So to me, that game's going to be a very another close game where I don't. It's going to be interesting. I think Mary's has the advantage, but I think that that's going to be a very competitive game, especially with Mary being at home.
Before we move on to the Birmingham area region, Jeff, let me get your thoughts on this because we've experienced this a lot in our area this year. Gary and me have gotten to see John Carroll really essentially rise up from being horrible, and now they're 9-2. They're having a great season. They're a really good football team. This MGM program has historically just been awful. And I mean, outside of a couple of good years, I mean, if you look from their year to year over the past 50 years, this program is never been good. So what has been the difference for them this year? I mean, 11-0 just putting together something really special.
Yeah, they've got some pieces on defense. John Robinson leads their defense and tackles, and that's where they stepped up. They only gave up 8 points a game, which that's in 7A, that's probably 1 or 2 in 7A. So their defense has improved tremendously. But like I said, the quarterback play of Jared Hollins has just been special. I mean, he came into that game, with 2,300 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and only 2 picks on the season. I mean, 29 TDs, 2 interceptions. Wow. Kyle, there's your difference maker right there. I mean, a guy's having a super year. I mean, he could be up for Mr. Football. I mean, really, he's had a tremendous year. And, he doesn't run it as much as some of these other, quarterbacks like to run and pass. He's more of a sit in the pocket, look downfield. And like I said, their defense been stingy, and they're scoring some points. And I think, to me, the big unknown, with them, because they're in Region 1, Region 2 is definitely, across the board, the better region for sure. And so we don't really know how that Region 1 is, but that was a great win over Dothan last week. I'm telling you, this Mary Montgomery team's, they're undefeated, and they're winning games, and they're, like I said, defense, and they've got a great senior quarterback that they can, rely on.
Awesome. Yeah, so we'll see how that shakes out this week with MGM. We'll move to the bottom half of the 7A bracket. Once again, you can extend the streak of Region 3 sweeps another year. I think now that makes 7 years. Over the last 7 years, Region 3 has lost 1 first-round playoff game. And they swept again this week. So that leaves Hoover heading to Hewitt-Trussville. Vestavia Hills heading to Thompson. Gary, let's start by talking about this Hoover versus Hewitt-Trussville matchup. Hoover storms back in the second half. They score 35 unanswered points to blow James Clemens off the field over the final 2 quarters. Heading to Hewitt-Trussville, a team that, that game against Bob Jones last week was over within 5 minutes. I mean, they blitzed Bob Jones and put that game away quickly. Gary, you'll be there on Friday night. What are you expecting?
If you're a Hewitt-Trussville fan, I mean, I think I'd be scared. I'd be confident, but I would be kind of like a quiet confidence. Hoover, these last 5 games, they're scoring 39 points a game, allowing 13 points a game, and they've been just an incredible second half team. Some of these slow starts, even against opponents that maybe they were, better than on paper. They played kind of the lesser half, not named Thompson, of Region 3, but still, they put it all together. Jonah Winston seems to be the guy at quarterback running the system that they're running now. They've really found something with him running Bradley Shaw. He seems to keep, he's kind of like Christian McCaffrey. He can't stay out of the end zone right now. So that's been impressive. So this is a vastly different Hoover team than Hewitt-Trussville beat 28-7 back in September. Completely different. So you've got to prepare differently. You're preparing for a whole different kind of look from them, and you're going to have to keep Jonah Winston from shaking loose. Some of that option stuff that they're doing with him. You've got to keep him in front of you, or it could be a tough night. So I think if you're Hewitt-Trussville, you still know. I think you still know you're the better team. You've still got more weapons overall, and you've just got to come out with confidence. You're playing at home, which there have been times where Hewitt-Trussville has not played their best game at home on the big stage. You need to play your best game on the big stage at home this week if you want a chance to go to the semifinals. So, to me, this is maybe the most intriguing game left in 7A, potentially, just because what Hewitt-Trussville team are we getting, especially defensively? We pretty much know what we're getting offensively. And then will Hoover continue to find some of that success? So, I mean, I could see it's one of those games where I could see Hoover pulling the upset. I could see Hewitt winning by 17 points. I could see a game coming down right to the end and a field goal type thing. So I think that's the intrigue in a game like this. A lot of unknowns, even though we've already seen these teams play each other. So really looking forward to that and seeing who comes out on top and gets the winner of Thompson-Vestavia.
Yeah, a few notes. You mentioned Bradley Shaw. This guy is a linebacker. He's one of the top linebackers in the state, and he has scored a touchdown in 5 straight games. Now, granted, a few of those, they do hand him the ball out of the backfield occasionally. He scored that way. He scored on a fumble recovery. He scored on special teams. Like, this guy is just wrecking football games any way you can imagine for Hoover right now. And it's really impressive to see. So you know that Hewitt-Trussville's game plan will they'll have to know where he is on the field at all times on both sides of the ball. And then Jeff, you were there last week when Hoover goes from a completely just dead in the water team against James Clemens in that first half, and then they come out in the second half, and it is like one of the most impressive performances you've seen from any team all year. Gary mentioned Jonah Winston playing quarterback now. That guy's just a playmaker. Anytime the ball's in his hands, good things seem to happen, even though it may not be the prototypical, spread it around, throw it around type of offense, but the guy knows how to make plays. There's a reason that he started the first game last year at quarterback for Hoover, because they see something in this guy, and there's just good things happen when the ball is in Jonah Winston's hands.
Yeah, well, the thing that's hard to prepare for Jonah is his foot speed. I mean, he has got tremendous quickness, and he can plan on a dime and shift his weight and go another direction, really, really quick, really, really fast. And when you prepare for that, you really can't do that. Defenses have a hard time because you can't simulate him in practice. And so when he runs the option, or if he just goes back to pass and teams are playing man-to-man and everybody turns their back, well, guess what? There goes Jonah, and he's going to take off. So, to me, Hewitt's going to have to decide, are we going to play man and try to guard their receivers, or we're going to have to sit in the zone and make sure that he stays sort of in front of us, because that's going to be the chess match, I think, for Hewitt to see how they want to play Jonah on defense, because like I said, he gets in the open field and he's going to cause problems, and it's not just a set play. When he drops back, it's going to be 50% pass and 50% he's probably just going to take off and run. And like I said, when everybody's spread out, he's a very dangerous runner.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder how Hewitt-Trussville will play that, Jeff, like you mentioned, because we've talked about it several times throughout the year that Hewitt-Trussville's Achilles heel on defense seems to be at times that secondary. Not that they're bad, they're very talented. They just had some inconsistencies. I mean, you can point to the Spain Park loss for sure, where they gave up 400 and some odd passing yards to Brock Bradley. So do you think Hoover and Jonah Winston, do they have enough to pass the ball and have success against Hoover, or against Hewitt, or do you think Hewitt's going to try to bring a lot of guys forward to the line and try to contain Jonah?
Well, I think his passing game has definitely improved over the last, really since Thompson. I mean, before the Thompson game, I think he threw one pass, and the Thompson game they sort of unleashed him. So now he has that game under his belt. He has the James Clemens game under his belt where he threw the ball, and so I think Hewitt's in your mind. You think that hey, we're going to put 8 in the box, 9 in the box, and try to stop the run game. But I'm telling you, it's just there's something. They're getting blocking now. I mean, it's just hard to put a finger on with Hoover because you don't know the Jonah Winston factor in this. Like I said, it's mostly scramble plays that just happen with him, and then when he scrambles, it opens up other guys on runs or short passes or things like that. So, it was like 2 different games watching James Clemens up there last Friday night. The first half, offensively, they just could not do anything. And in the second half, they got every stop, every turnover they wanted to get in the second half. And like I said, enough offense. It's just hard to see. There's something these guys at Hoover are rallying right now around their team and around the switch at quarterback. And it's hard to put a finger on it, but all I know is there's something special about Jonah Winston. I can say that without any hesitation.
Yeah. And hey, Kyle, before we move on, I know we've spent a lot of time on Hewitt Hoover here, but we can't talk about that game this much and not give flowers to the other quarterback on the other side. I mean, Hoover's still got to deal with, the reigning 7A back of the year, Peyton Floyd. And you mentioned Hoover turning over James Clemens and their opponents. I mean, I think that's going to be an obvious key for Hewitt-Trussville is take care of the ball, don't give them a short field. I mean, make your big plays. We know that offense is really good, but I think they're really going to have to take care of the ball in this game.
Yeah, and I think y'all both hit on it. Last week, Jonah Winston threw for 50 yards, and like 32 of those came on one play. So you can look at it either way. You can look at it as they didn't even need the passing game to do what they did in the second half, which is really impressive. Or, like Gary mentioned with Peyton Floyd, he's been playing great. And I will say, so I was at the regular season meeting between these two teams when Hewitt won 28-7, and I'll be honest, like it was a special night because it was Peyton Floyd's birthday, and so them getting that win over Hoover 28-7 was really sweet. But I think to a man like Hewitt would tell you, like, they don't feel like they played very well, especially offensively in that game. If Hewitt-Trussville plays anywhere near to their potential on offense, they win this game. There's no doubt. But if Hoover's defense is still really good, and they have been throughout this season, even in the tough opening stretch of the season. So there's a lot of ways this can go, and I'm excited to see how that one shakes out.
One more key thing about Hoover, Moultrie's been out on defense, and so we're not sure what his status. He's getting there, but he could still be out in that secondary, and it's just like Hoover just plugs in another guy, and it's like I said, there's just something about this Hoover team. I can't put my finger on it because they've got injuries and changes galore, and it's just like every button they push here has just been something else. But I'm like you guys. I mean, they're playing a really good team in Hewitt-Trussville where they've played some very, very good games, and then they played some bad games. What Husky team are you going to get Friday night?
Exactly. One other trend, Hewitt-Trussville, their last 6 trips to the playoffs, they have made it to the second round and no further. So they will be trying to break that streak as well. And then the final second round 7A game, Thompson hosting Vestavia Hills. Gary, me and you have talked to Vestavia coach Robert Evans countless times since he was hired, and he has reiterated the same refrain. You want to get to a point as a program where you're playing Thompson twice in a season. That means you put yourself in a position to make something happen. And this is the second straight year that Vestavia has done that. Last year in the playoffs, they lost by 9 in this matchup. They had their chances, and it just kind of let it slip away. this time around in the regular season, Thompson won 21-3. That score was 7-3 into the fourth quarter in that game. It was a defensive battle. I think the most concerning thing that Vestavia came away with from that contest was the fact that they could not move the ball against Thompson's defense. So what adjustments will the Rebels make to kind of counteract that? I will say, having seen Vestavia last week, Austin gave the Rebels a really good game. I mean, Austin was right with them in the first half. And then Austin broke a big play on the first play of the second half. But from then on, Vestavia really kind of put the pedal to the floor and took off and showed what they can be, pulling away with a 3-touchdown win there in Decatur. So guys, I mean, what do you think? This is really interesting because Vestavia seems like a team good enough to challenge Thompson, but at the same time, it's like Thompson's been here, done this 100 times. They're 4-time defending champs for a reason. You're going to have to really put your best effort to have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that over the last 2 years, Vestavia has played Thompson tougher than anybody on Thompson's schedule. I mean, we can look at Rob's, first game against Thompson last year. That was, I think the final was 34-14 maybe, or 30, I forget exactly what the score was. It was a 1-point game at halftime, and John Paul Head got injured near the end of that first half, didn't play the second half, and so Thompson kind of pulls away and wins by 20. If you're just a box score looker, you would say, oh, Thompson wins big, but that wasn't really the story of the game. And then, like you said, the playoffs, 21-12 game, and then this year, 21-3. That was 7-3 heading into the fourth quarter. So the Rebels have been right there. They just at times haven't been able to move the ball. They've, a costly turnover here and there, that kind of thing. So they've definitely got what it takes, but is this the time that they put it all together? I think John Paul Head's going to have to be able to run the ball, William Tonsmeyer as well. But in recent weeks, it really seems like that passing game has maybe elevated, incrementally week by week. Keon Richardson had a big game at Austin, so I think you're going to have to win the line of scrimmage, or at least 50-50 the line of scrimmage with Thompson and hit some of those big plays. If you can't sustain drives, you're going to have to hit a 50-yard bomb, a 60-yard bomb here and there to have a chance. But does Vestavia have a chance? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think they have a chance. It's going to come down to, Thompson's offensive line giving Trent Seaborn enough time to throw to get the big passes. I mean, he's last week against Florence, they blitzed the whole game and he just dumped it off to their backs and he just had a huge game. Florence didn't even try to make an adjustment. And they just was like, hey, we're just going to keep throwing pressure at your offensive line and see how it holds up. But he just kept dumping. I mean, both running backs, I think, had almost like 18 receptions total between the two of them. And, for about 100 yards each. So it's, it always, to me, comes down Seaborn making those big 3rd and 4th down passes that just are killers for scores. I mean, to me, he's the best quarterback we have in the state about just throwing the deep ball. And he's got 3 very, very, very good receivers at any time to go to. I've had one stat here about Thompson that really just amazes me, that their 2 top defensive players and tackles this year are their safety and corner. Caleb Harris leads them in tackles. He has 10 tackles for loss, a sack, and 3 picks this season. And Anquan Fagans has 3 picks this season, but he's second on the team in tackles. So it just shows you that those guys like to play up in the line of scrimmage and come up and make tackles, that there could be opportunities in the passing game to throw over top, but that's not really the strength of Vestavia. And that's what I think Thompson did really well against them last time, is those 2 guys was up there in the line of scrimmage and really shut down John Paul Head in the running game. And they're going to try to keep doing that this year, is not let him go off on that run game, to say, hey, there's got to be somebody else there that can beat us. And Richardson definitely has the skills to make those plays. It's just unfortunately, Thompson's got the defensive backs to, fend people off.
So I was looking back, we kind of we did this last week, talking about the Homewood Saraland game from last year's playoffs. You look back at the Vestavia Thompson playoff game last year, and Thompson was up 7-6 at the half, 7-6 at the end of the third quarter. And in the fourth quarter, in their own territory, Vestavia fakes a punt that did not go well, and Thompson scored pretty quick right after that. Evans said after the game he wished he had not made that call, but he knew he was going to be aggressive, and it is what it is. Well, then they go down and score to cut it to 14-12. 2-point play fails. So 5 minutes to go in the game, and you're only down 2. And then I remember this now after reading it. They forced a punt, and they muffed the punt on the return and gave the ball back to Thompson. So Vestavia was in that game the whole way last year. Gary, you mentioned the regular season meeting. The score was close at the half, and Vestavia had turned the ball over 5 times in the first half in that game.
Yeah, that was last year's.
Yeah.
Last year's regular season game. Yeah, John Paul had thrown 4 picks in the first half, and it was still like a 1-point game, something like that at the half. And then he was out for the second half with an injury. So they were playing, I think it was Luke Turner, I think, came in and played for him in the second half. And Thompson hit a couple of deep passes quick, and that was it. But, there's nuance to these games. There's context, and me, I'm a context guy. So, you still lost the game, whether it be 50-0 or 7-6, but they've been right there. They've just got to put it together for the full 48 minutes and see where they're at the end.
Yeah,
I'd be willing to bet that limiting turnovers will be a key point of emphasis for Vestavia in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think the turnover battle is huge in this game. But one thing to also look, I think, in Vestavia Hills' favor is Thompson's run game has really not been there for most of the year. And I think it's because they have that they don't have the offensive line they've had in the past. And so that short passing game is something that they've relied on to keep the drives going. So if you can interrupt that, get the run game off their beat again, it's definitely gonna force Seaborn, like I said, to make those chances on some of those deep passes. And he's connected. I mean, like I said, he's got 3 guys in those receivers that they can get open, and once they catch it in that space, they're dangerous.
Yeah,
I think you might see Kyle, you mentioned like that fake punt last year in your own territory. I think you'll see another. I mean, Rob Evans and that staff, they take chances. But, Josh Franklin is an incredible offensive coordinator. And I think you're going to see the cliche, the kitchen sink thrown at Thompson. But I think if this makes sense, I think you're going to see it done in a smart, sound kind of way. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jordan Ross going up for passes again like we have at times this season.
Yeah, I see that definitely when they get in the red zone. I think when they need some more options, I definitely would think that they're going to throw. It's all hands on deck Friday night. So I could definitely see Ross playing a few snaps on their jumbo package that they have.
Yeah, he was in a couple plays against Austin last week. They tried to hit him once. So yeah, I think you definitely can count on that being brought back. So those are the 4 games, 8 teams left in 7A. It's going to be a lot of fun watching it unfold this Friday and the next Friday. But guys, let's move into the 6A bracket. Let's break down the second round matchups. Let's see. All right, you look down. There were a ton of really surprising, results last weekend. Not a ton of upset. Nothing too crazy, I don't think. But we can just start at the top here. So a game happening around here. Briarwood Christian is getting to host defending state champ Saraland in the second round. No matter how you slice it up on paper, Saraland has the advantage in every way in this matchup. Briarwood has been a fun team to watch. They had a really interesting game last week. They shut out Carver 25-0. In the first quarter, Briarwood scored on offense, on defense, and special teams, which is really funny how that works because at the end of their game the week before against Fairhope, Coach Matthew Forrester was like, well, we played good in one phase, but we didn't put it all together, so we need to put it all together. And then last week they do exactly that. And then the lights went out in half the stadium at the Crampton Bowl. It was just a mess. But Briarwood got the win. But Saraland is the heavy favorite here. They have played one close game this year, and it was a 1-point overtime win against Lipscomb Academy to start the year, which, if you know anything about Lipscomb Academy, they've been a premier program in the Southeast for the last few years. So, Jeff, have you seen this Saraland team this year?
Not this year. I got to see them at Theodore last year in a semifinal game, in the playoffs in the final game. So I saw them back-to-back games last year, but no, I've not seen them. I just, they're a lot of those kids were sophomores. Now their skill guys are juniors now. I mean, their running back is a junior. They can feed him. They can Ryan Williams on the outside. I mean, Lacey, they just take your pick. I'm thinking like Briarwood, can they go in the four corners and just stall and just shorten the game somehow, because it's going to be pedal to the metal for them, for the Spartans, just to really, every time they touch the ball, they're going to push the envelope and force the ball downfield with Williams.
Yeah. Gary, what have your impressions been of seeing this Briarwood team so far?
I mean, I tell you what, that defense last week was lights out.
Literally.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. But yeah, I mean, so the defense has been, we've talked a lot about, especially that defensive front, causing havoc in backfields, forcing throws, and then they really do that. Briarwood's got some playmakers in the secondary. Defense is a really good defense, but Saraland is a different animal on offense. So I think you're going to see for Briarwood, like Jeff said, I think you're going to have to be able to run the ball on them, and that really is kind of Briarwood's bread and butter on offense. I mean, Luke Reynolds has been incredible when he's been healthy and when he's been getting touches. Cooper Higgins running the ball. They're really going to have to find some success on the ground and capitalize. Not get all the way down the field and get backed up and then have a field goal attempt. They're going to have some of these drives where it's like 15 plays on 14 rushes and it takes 6 minutes off the clock, that kind of deal, and end with 7 points, tall task, but it is interesting. Saraland's got to come all the way up here, just like Homewood had to go all the way down there last year. So, we'll see, but this Saraland team is just, you mentioned the win over Lipscomb in overtime. Against the Alabama teams, their closest game this year has been Theodore, and it was 42-13.
Mm-hmm.
Their next closest game was a 39-point win. So they're not just winning games that they should win. I mean, they're literally just annihilating every team they play. So just an incredible opportunity for Briarwood, but an incredibly tall task as well.
And that's sort of the Theodore team is sort of the style of team like Briarwood. Pretty good defense, limited on offense. To me, they're the same type matchup that Theodore is, and Theodore they can't offensively, don't have much to hang their hat on where they're going to score 42 points to beat Saraland.
Right. Yeah. So I would imagine that Luke Reynolds will get a lot of direct snaps, 3 yards in a cloud of rubber pellets type of deal. So we'll see how that shakes out. The next game, Hillcrest Tuscaloosa hosting Helena. Hillcrest got past St. Paul's last week, low-scoring game. Helena was the opposite. Jordan Washington scored 7 touchdowns for Helena. I'd imagine, Jeff, if Helena has any chance in this game, Jordan Washington is going to have to do that again.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're gonna wear him out and give him the ball as much as they can. I mean, he's their playmaker on offense. I mean, he's the guy that's been around for 4 years. as a freshman running back for Helena. I mean, they're going to have to rely on him. And unfortunately, the strength of Hillcrest is their front line. They don't let teams run on you, and so they're sort of running team. So they face it in practice a lot, and so it's going to be an interesting matchup to see what Washington could do. I know, when they played Ben Russell the last regular season game, they struggled scoring some points, and that's what's going to be interesting is what else can they get other than Washington on offense, because Hillcrest is going to really try to take him out of the game.
Yeah, Gary, I know you've been high on this Helena team. Does the Magic run out this week?
I mean, I think Jeff kind of said it all. I think it's who wins out, Hillcrest defensive front or Jordan Washington and that Helena offensive line. So I'm not sure what else you can try based on matchups and stuff when both teams' biggest strengths are running back Jordan Washington for Helena, defensive front for Hillcrest. I mean, best on best and see who comes out on top. See if you can, I mean, Hillcrest didn't put up a ton of points. So if you can keep this thing close, heading into the fourth quarter and, maybe you break one, maybe you wear them down. Kind of, they wore down that Briarwood defensive line and defense as a whole in that game earlier this year. So, if you can do that and have a chance in the fourth quarter, that's maybe just about all you can ask for in a game like this.
Yep. All right, moving on down. Benjamin Russell is going to host Hueytown. This Ben Russell team has been playing really, really well, especially the second half of the season. They got by Sidney Lanier last week, and Hueytown beat Theodore 14-0. We kind of hit on Theodore. Great season, but just couldn't score last week. Jeff, how do you see this one shaking out? This is a Hueytown team that they were in the state championship game 2 years ago. Hadn't really been heard from much the last couple years, but they'll get a chance at Ben Russell now.
Well, it's almost two different styles because Benjamin Russell likes to throw the ball to their big receivers and they can sort of stretch the field. But I've been on Hueytown since I seen them with Clay-Chalkville this year. Is defensively they're really, really good. Their front line with Keith Green, he's a Division II commit, and he's Cole Caldwell is another bookend for Hueytown on that defensive front. And Ellington does enough at offense, and Rouser is back healthy. Their running back from last year, he's had a good season the second half of the year, and so I think offensively they're coming around. To me, the Hueytown defense is better than Benjamin Russell. So can they get enough points, Hueytown, to balance that out? So to me, this is going to be a very close game. This would be one that I would love to go to because I think these two teams are very evenly matched with different strengths, and it's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out. But like I said, Hueytown getting that shutout last week, their defense is very underrated, and they've been playing well all season. But it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I don't think this one might be the first team to 21 score that wins the game because they got some players on defense.
Mm-hmm. All right. Pike Road hosting Spanish Fort. Pike Road beat Homewood 10-9 last week. Really tough loss for Homewood. There were some iffy things that went on during that game. I went back and watched the broadcast a little bit. Homewood had an extra point blocked. Pike Road kicked a field goal early in the fourth quarter that kind of gave them the lead for good. And it was pouring down rain in the second half, and neither team could do anything, basically. So Homewood, second straight year, 1 point loss in the playoffs. That's tough to take. But this Pike Road team is a good one, and they host Spanish Fort this week. Jeff, have you seen either one of these squads so far?
Yeah, I've seen the Pike Road team when they won the region championship over Carver, and they did it in pretty good style. same thing with, Pike Road. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Spanish Fort's defense is very, very good. And Pike Road's got the freshman quarterback, Cason Myers, that's had a great year. In the Pike Road defense, they just rely on the Auburn commit, Malik Blockton. I mean, he's had a unbelievable year. Their coaches think that he could have played anywhere. He could have been the Alabama player. He could have played anywhere. That he's going to do really well at Auburn in the next 4 years. But they're more players on defense to me on Pike Road, and offensively, it's like who can get enough offense to win. I mean, this would not be surprise me if it's a 7-3 game, or it's a 10-7 game, or a special team mistake or something like that is the difference, because both of them play defense very well, and it's can they get enough offense to overcome their liabilities on offense.
Oh, well, that's how Pike Road scored their touchdown last week. Malik Blockton had it depends on who you ask. It could be a fumble recovery, pick six, whatever. But Homewood quarterback Will Myers was running around in the backfield, and the ball slipped out of his hands. It looked like he was trying to throw the ball and maybe was trying to pull it back in, but either way, the ball flew out of his hands, and Malik Blockton was right there, and he took it the rest of the way. All right, Gary, do you want a 44-40 or a 7-6 type of game?
In which game?
I mean, what's your preference? What do you want to watch? What's more entertaining to you?
I mean, it kind of depends. Okay, if I'm covering the game for deadline purposes, give me the 7-6 game. True reporter answer there. But I mean, I've covered them both. I mean, I guess I'm going to ride the fence here. I guess it depends on who it is. A year or two, or a couple of years ago, I covered that Clay-Chalkville Gardendale game that went into overtime, and I forget the finals, 44-42 or something crazy like that. That was incredibly exciting. But I've also been to some of these 13-10 games, so I think when it's this time of year, and this is cliche, but this time of year, it's playoffs. It's hopefully getting a little cooler. Maybe the rain could stay away for a Friday. That'd be nice. I think I would lean the defensive battle, but who can make a play late and just really see a gritty kind of game. I think that's where I would go if I had to pick between the two.
Well, there's definitely a difference between well played defensive battles versus no defense, offensive shootouts. A well-played game either way. Give me that. All right, so the bottom half of the 6A bracket. Parker hosting Oxford this week. Parker's been a hot team all year. They kept it rolling last week. Oxford got past Athens. Jeff, what do you give Oxford in terms of a chance this week against Parker?
Well, with Mason Mims at quarterback, I give them a chance they're going to score some points. He's a very good 6'3" quarterback that can throw the ball downfield, and he's got a few receivers that he can throw the ball to. Really good running game. Jaden Thomas has been there since his freshman year, and D.K. Wilson is another Oxford running back that's very good. So they're going to put some pressure, and I think on scoring some points on Parker. Again, I'm not sure about Malik Muhammad again with his injury. I know he's supposed to be back this year, but I know that Cam Jennings has still been the quarterback. And there's just something about when Muhammad's in there, he can go. I mean, he's a very quick, another fast running back or quarterback. And they have a play in where he's at receiver, he's at running back, he's at quarterback. So offensively, they've got, a lot of variety. They can put different players with Offord at defensive back. They'll put him at running back, receiver. And so Parker, very interesting team. I mean, they're loaded on defense, as we know. But I would be shocked if this is another 21-20 type game. It wouldn't shock me, something like that. But I think Oxford's going to make it very competitive.
Yeah, Gary, you like this Parker team, don't you?
Not as much as Jeff has, but after seeing them the one time I saw them, I mean, they were, I mean, especially on defense, just, I mean, they're just loaded. I mean, they've got a lot of guys there at Parker, and that defensive front is good. Naeem offered. I mean, he played both ways when we were at the game against Mountain Brook. I mean, he was kind of the difference on offense, and on defense, his length and the way he plays in the secondary just really really good. So tough place to go play for Oxford, but like Jeff said, I think this one could be a pretty competitive game in the second round.
Let's get to a couple more before our last one. Gadsden City is hosting Hartselle. Um, the Gadsden City, this Gadsden City team has been really, I guess, resurgent is the right word. They've won their region back to back years. It hasn't been the best region in the world, but winning the region's winning the region. And then they really took care of Gardendale last week. This Hartselle team, give credit to Centerpoint and George Bates. They gave Hartselle a test last week. So Jeff, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this game, and then also the Muscle Shoals Fort Payne matchup.
Yeah, we talked about Hoover having sort of this magical season here in the second half. Gadsden City, to me, is in that same boat where they got the Kirkpatrick kid that's just making plays on kick returns for touchdowns, punt returns on touchdowns, pick sixes on touchdowns. I mean, they've got something going there. They got a good running back, and they're gonna score some points. Again, the Hartselle team, backup quarterbacks in there this year. They lost their quarterback earlier in the season, the last few weeks, and so they're limited on offense because they had to take that better receiver and put him at quarterback. And so Hartselle is just not scoring points. So it's going to be interesting to see, because Gadsden City is scoring points different ways, how this game shakes out. But I really think this is going to be a competitive game, in another low scoring game, but very competitive.
Mm-hmm. And then you get Muscle Shoals is hosting Fort Payne. This Fort Payne team, we covered Chris Elmore when he was a coach at Chelsea, and he's made the playoffs every year. He's been at Fort Payne the last 5 or 6 years. But this is going to be a tough test. Jeff, this Muscle Shoals team comes in 10-0. They've just about blown out everybody. How good is this Trojans team?
They're good. I mean, I've talked to a lot of those 7A teams up north, and everybody I try to talk to say, because James Clemens got beat by him, and I talked to Chad about it before his game and asked him, "Hey, how good's this Muscle Shoals team?" And he goes, "Man, these guys are in the right places at the right time, and they just hustle their tail off." And he said they're a solid team, and he goes, we don't know, because one of the regions, their region's a little better, Region 7 than 8 for sure. But it's like when they have to come down and play some other teams here in Birmingham, they're going to struggle. But I think they're going to have their way with Fort Payne. Defensively, Fort Payne is not very good on defense, but Fort Payne is scoring points. Their quarterback, Dax Varnador, he's had a great season. I mean, he's throwing up all kinds of numbers on offense. And to me, this is going to be a high-scoring game, but I think Muscle Shoals just finds a way and comes out with the win.
And finally, Gary, I want to get your breakdown on Clay-Chalkville versus Mountain Brook. These teams meeting in the playoffs for the third time in recent years anyways. And the previous two have kind of gone different ways. The first time, I think Clay-Chalkville wishes they could have that game plan back, and Mountain Brook kind of took it to them. And then the second time around, Clay-Chalkville took care of business. This year, Clay-Chalkville got that first round monkey off their back by blowing Coleman out of the water. That game was 49-7, and it was over real quick. So Gary, I mean, what do you think? I mean, the Spartans are dealing with 2 key injuries on offense. They're a little shorthanded, and they're already going to be shorthanded against this Clay-Chalkville attack on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game, you mentioned the two previous playoffs, where I guess it was 2020 where Mountain Brook won
Mm.
21-10, low scoring game.
Yep.
The next year, Clay pays him back with a 24-18 win, I think. So both, relatively low scoring competitive games, both of those at Mountain Brook. This game is at Clay-Chalkville High School. So I think this is, like you mentioned, with the injuries that Mountain Brook has and coming in, quote unquote, short-handed a little bit. I think you've got to, it's kind of like, I look at it almost kind of like Jordan Washington and Helena against Hillcrest, where lean on Cole Gamble, hope he can find some holes. Hopefully your offensive line can, create enough of a push, hold off that Clay-Chalkville defensive front enough to give him some running room. I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to get this ball 35 times if they're on the field long enough. Against a really, really good Clay-Chalkville defense that only allowing 8.5 points a game. I think it's just going to be a really, really tall task to win at Clay-Chalkville. And but the Spartans are one of the most sound defensive teams. I'm sure they'll have something in place to try to limit Jalen Mbakwe and Mario Craver on the outside. But I think Clay-Chalkville's probably got just too much depth, too much strength, and too many playmakers for this game to be really as close as it's been the last two times they've played in the playoffs. I think ultimately I would like Clay-Chalkville by, low double digits in this game. That would be my read. So I look forward to being proven wrong on my predictions.
Well, if Mountain Brook has any chance in this game, it's going to have to be one of those. They're not going to be – if they get into like a 36-33 type of game that Clay-Chalkville played against Thompson, I mean, Mountain Brook has no chance in that type of game. They're going to have to limit possessions, run the ball effectively, stop the run on the other side, and see how it shakes out. I don't know, Jeff, if you have any other keys for Mountain Brook, because this is another one where cards are stacked against them here.
They are. It is. I think the Clark Sanderson injury was huge. Also, the Courtney, the lineman, he's probably their second best lineman, is out, and so those two injuries, like you said, Kyle, to me are huge. And I just don't know if they have enough on offense to push the ball down the field when Clay puts 8 guys in the box. I mean, they're going to really. I can see one of these games with Cole Gamble. It has 30 carries for 85 yards, and just because they're gonna really try to stack him, take him out of the game.
Well, if it's Mountain Brook's last game, it's one of those empty the tank, man. Hand the ball to Cole Gamble as many times as it takes, and we'll see if they can make that interesting against a Clay-Chalkville team. We talked about it last week. They kind of have fallen a little off the radar since that Thompson game because they've had 2 off weeks and only one really close game since. But this is one of the championship favorites in 6A, so Mountain Brook will have their hands full there. But all right, guys, that's what we got. I will, if you kind of project ahead, the 6A quarterfinals could consist of a Saraland versus Hillcrest and a Clay-Chalkville versus Muscle Shoals. Those are a couple of matchups that you could get in the quarterfinals next week. That would be quite the Black Friday treat if we were to get them. But at the same time, the 7A semifinals next week will also be a lot of fun, no matter who it is. So get ready for all of that. Guys, we're recording this on a Wednesday morning. Friday night is coming quick. I'm assuming we'll see. I mean, look, we'll all three be at a different 7A game this week, so we'll be able to give you all the scoop next week.
Yeah,
It'll be
Can
fun.
we talk about John Carroll just a second in 5A? My gosh.
Go for it. What you got?
Well, first playoff win since 2004. And now,
John
they
Carroll,
did it on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Carroll,
Yeah.
on the road at Fairview. And, now they get a not only do you make the playoffs for the first time since 2009, you get your first playoff win since 2004, and now you get to have one of these games at home against a really good Gunnersville team. So, I know that's our only 5A team kind of in our footprint, but they're still in it, 9-2, and they're I don't know anything about Gunnersville other than they're 10-1 and obviously a really good team, but if I'm any team in 5A, I'm kind of scared of this John Carroll team just because like they seem to have a lot of momentum, and I know if they won this game this week, if they do, they'd probably get a rematch with Pleasant Grove, and that might be a different story.
Sure.
But they've returned some guys. C.J. Wyatt was back on the defensive line at Fairview, and John Carroll. They won the game in a much different way than we've seen them win games this year. And I think that's what impressed me most was we've seen them just outscore people. And, the defense hasn't been necessarily great. Well, they go to Fairview, and now Fairview, they couldn't really throw the ball very well, but, I mean, they'll run the ball for 300 yards if you let them. And they just, Jake Harper, the Fairview running back, went for 182, but he didn't get in the end zone. So a little bit of bend, but don't break there. They shut everybody else down, forced a fumble, had a couple of interceptions, and win the thing 22-14. So it was just a very much a different kind of win for them. And, I will say this. As the game was ending and it was apparent that John Carroll was going to win, they get an interception to close the thing out. I had my phone out despite the rain and was ready for just absolute mayhem, right? Just your first playoff win, all that. And the guys were just, it was like it was a normal win. It was very businesslike.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, seeing 15, 16, 17-year-old kids who've made the playoffs for the first time, won a playoff game for the first time, react like that, to me, that's scary. That's that whole unfinished business thing, and I think we might see quite a game with them in Gunnersville this week.
Oh, I give John Carroll a very real chance against Gunnersville this week. I love the quote that you got from Will Mara last week about just, well, it means I get to paint the field one more time, right? That's one of the things that I remember most about Mountain Brook's run to the state championship game last year is every week we just get to talk to Chris Yeager after games and during the weeks, and he just kept saying the same thing. He's like, man, I get to coach these guys for another week. We get to play football for another week. We get to go out here and practice 4 or 5 more times during a week. And you could tell he meant that. It wasn't just, blowing smoke. Like, he genuinely loved coaching that team. And that's kind of what that reminds me of. John Carroll's leaving the game last Friday, and coach is already like, yeah, I get to paint the field one more time. So that's the good stuff. And, Cavs got a shot against Gunnersville this week. We'll see how it plays out. And then one final note, guys. We'll probably talk before Thanksgiving, so we don't have to do that whole cliche topic yet. My Day of the Red Devils prediction is still alive. Central's flag football team won in the quarterfinals last week. They are playing in the semifinals against Prattville on Thursday night, so that December 6th prediction for me is still alive and well. We'll see how that flag football game shakes out. But, guys, let's have a good Friday night. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.